So we just forget how much kids are capable of because we have been fed this lie that our kids are in constant danger, that they only learn when we're didactically teaching them and sitting down and showing them,
Mm.
and that they can't handle anything. And it's not true. It's dispiriting how little our society gives credit to kids for being able to do. One is really obvious. You got to blame the media. The media discovered missing children in the 80s. They put them on the milk cartons. They made miniseries about them. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children testified in Congress falsely that 50,000 children are snatched every year. That's off by a factor of about 50,000.
Oh my
It's way smaller. There's no crime that is less common than a stranger abducting a child. Thank God. And yet, when you start looking at all those milk cartons and you're eating your cereal in the morning, or your kid is eating a homemade omelet, um, you start to feel that right and left children are being snatched off the street. So the media decided that this was not decided, recognized this as the most lucrative story that they could tell. Because if they're telling the story about a white middle or upper middle class child who's been taken by a stranger, no one will turn off their TV, which is why Law and Order started Law and Order SVU, because, why would you start a whole television show about the saddest, grossest, most disturbing possible thing? Well, it must make money, right? And so it does. So between the news and the drama shows, you just are getting a steady diet, as it were, of these really very troubling stories that lodge themselves in our brain. And our brain works like Google. And if you ask, is my child safe at the bus stop? The brain says, let me look. And the easiest stories for it to find are, no, Aton Patz was taken from a bus stop. No, JC Dugard was taken from a bus stop. And just like with Google, you think that the first couple of responses are probably all you need, right? The easiest to retrieve responses or research results are the ones that you consult. And in this case, the easiest ones to retrieve are actually the ones that are the scariest and probably least common. And that starts determining what we think of when we see a kid outside, or you see a kid at a stove. So there's the media. You live in a litigious culture. You start thinking like a lawyer. Could I be sued for this? Is this fair? What about a waiver? Should I get rid of the trampoline? All these things rattle through your brain. We live in an expert culture, which is why I never say I'm an expert. I'm just certainly not a parenting expert. I'd say I'm an expert on fear at this point. But experts always tell you you're doing it wrong. Otherwise, you don't need them,
God.
right?
Right.
So, I mean, we keep thinking like, should we start our own expert, channel, with all our expertise? And it's like, all you parents out there are experts.
Mm.
And it's just the experts who have convinced you that you need somebody else to help you. In many cases, you don't. In many cases, you can ask your sister-in-law. You can remember your own childhood. It doesn't require an expert to decide what you're going to say to your kid when they bring home a picture like your kid drew, right?
Mhm.
It's just, oh, that's nice. That's totally fine. You don't have to think, I don't want to squash his creativity, but I also don't want him to get too inflated an idea of himself, and I got to think of that growth mindset. And besides of which, is too much praise actually the opposite? And then they start working for the praise instead of just drawing. It's not that complicated. It's like, that's a great drawing. Oh, you're cooking an egg. Why don't you go cook one now? And then finally, you have the marketplace, which of course is trying to sell you stuff. And the easiest things to sell parents are something to save your kid after you've made your parent worried that the kid is not going to do well or not going to survive. Then you can sell them anything, and we do.